Episode of our Dental HR Talk Show. And today we're going to be talking about how 2021 is literally just a few weeks away from where we are right now. And who would have thought that this crazy year is finally coming to an end? It has been full of ups and downs. And we wanted to talk today a little bit about how to prepare to lead your team into a brand new year. And what better way to prepare for that than to learn from some of the mistakes, some of the lessons that Sherry and I both had to learn the hard way when it came to managing practices from before. So today, Sherry is jumping on with us and really helping us find the best way for us to create a really successful practice in the new year and to be able to have all of your goals, your checklist, and your team on that same page. So in that way, we can move together in a forward direction. And who knows what 2021 is going to bring, but with that strong team and that strong momentum, we can get through anything together. So we want to be able to walk through the mistakes that we've both have made and how can we avoid all of these from happening in the future for you guys. So thanks so much, Sherry, for jumping in and being raw and open and vulnerable for all of the mistakes. Let's dive in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Hey, like all of the stuff that we go through in our office and as office managers, and sometimes what we go through is not easy. And one thing I hear a lot about is accountability and how we can hold our team members accountable to their actions. So, as an office manager, we always need to be proactive, especially in that moment. And sometimes it's not easy to let someone know when they have done something wrong. When it's something great, it's a lot easier to catch them and say, hey, I just want to say great job in the way you dealt with this patient, or, something that happened that was greater for the practice and the patient. But when there's an issue with negative behavior, it can definitely be a little tricky. And I can attest to this when I was first managing a couple of years ago, especially as you get to know your team and you know personal things about them, you do feel bad if you have to address an issue. And there can be tension with your team members if they feel that there's favoritism. And I remember, along with that, not recording any incidents and having the employees sign when they had been talked to.
Right. And that's the important piece, because like you said, it's, first of all, these conversations are hard. Like you were saying, we're in healthcare because we want to help people. And so having to provide constructive, feedback, to do corrective action, to terminate somebody, that's totally out of our comfort zone. And so when we're doing something that's out of our comfort zone for the first time, or if it's been a long time, we may forget the most important pieces. And like you were saying, it's documentation, right? And if these pieces aren't in place, this is where we tend to see that accountability piece doesn't end up happening, because there's no, for lack of a better word, repercussions for this situation or this mistake to continue happening over and over. So it's so important that if there's performance issues, if has been any performance improvement plans or disciplinary actions, or if we ever need to take it to the step of termination, what do we have in place to really protect our business? Because we always want to make sure, and fast forward to, worst case scenario, if this employee became disgruntled and filed a claim for wrongful dismissal or dismissal due to discriminatory reasons. If we have nothing to prove otherwise, they are going to win. So if we don't have that documentation, if we don't have that job descriptions that outline this is their roles and responsibilities, here's the performance improvement plan that we had asked them to work and improve in this area, here's another write-up that they didn't improve, or here's their payroll documents to show that they kept coming in late and we had this conversation on this date. If there's nothing like that in place, this is when we can open ourselves to a lot of risk, liability, and the potential of being sued. Now, I know, for example, with myself, managing a team of 50, sometimes it can seem that either when a situation arises and I had to jump in to kind of take over or provide some coaching, the other piece would be that lack of follow through from my part to really walk through and have it written out and summarized. Here's the expectations. Here's what we reviewed. Here's the training that we're going to go over on this date. But here's when we want to see that improvement by. So in that way, that again is closing that gap, closing that circle, but it also has that little documentation piece in there as well.
I love that, Samantha. And even when you're saying that you're coaching and working with them, because that is a big piece. It all comes in together on how you're documenting and how you're working with your team so they know what is expected. And, we see that a lot of time in dental practices. I know me and you have talked about this a lot, and that goes along with what you're saying on utilizing and cultivating that team that you want within your practice. So if your team is not supportive or they don't believe in, your goals or values for the practice, you're going to have a lot of issues. Mm-hmm. And I know I've gone into practices, I know you have gone into a lot of practices where the doctor is confused as to why they're having issues. And I always stress, it starts from the top. Mm-hmm. They look to the owners, they look to the leads, the office manager, and they also need to be taught and know what is expected of them. Mm-hmm. So it's so important that your entire team is learning along with your doctor and your office manager. And it has to be consistent. And I remember, and I know me and you have talked about this a lot, where it's like up and down. You're working with the practice and everything's great. Everything's perfect. You're like, man, this is awesome. Like we have the momentum, we're going forward. And then something happens. Mm-hmm. And it like crashes down and you're like, what just happened? You're always going to have the highs and lows. And I remember finally realizing as I was managing, like, it's never going to stay consistent. You will have those challenges, but you have to constantly work at it. You have to cultivate at it. And you just have to make sure that you have that momentum with your team. So you make sure that it is exciting and fulfilling for the entire team in practice.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I like what you said of, it's consistent, right? And it's, like you said, every single day is going to be different. There's going to be something like a process worked one day and then the next day everything falls apart. So that doesn't technically mean that all my team members, they're not that great. And we're, maybe I need to hire some new people who can actually do this process. And I would say that it's not always the team members. We need to look and see, is this a process issue? Is this a communication issue? Any type of bottleneck within the organization isn't always about something that somebody did wrong. It's about what do we need to do to be able to improve upon this, learn from it. So in that way, the next time another scenario comes up, or maybe we didn't even plan for this scenario. Maybe this scenario only included A to, D, and then we didn't even think about the rest of the other what if scenarios that could happen. And so we were all held up because we didn't know what to do. So most of the time, those bottlenecks break down to a breakdown in process or a breakdown in communication. So this is a great learning point to be able to see, how can we make this even better? And how can we get my team involved in that brainstorming session as well, so that they can be a part of the solution and then come up with that solution? And then again, we need to have that accountability process. So definitely we need to practice what we preach. We need to be that leader. And sometimes it's not easy to do, but it's super important to make sure that the communication piece is in place. And another piece that we were talking about as well for office managers is really not only the leadership of the team, but also the health and safety of the team. So that includes things like infection prevention control. That includes things like OHS, because that's the health and safety of your employees, and the mental wellness of your team as well. So it's super important to make sure to have all of those other avenues taken care of as well, and supervising it to ensure that all of the protocols are in place, everybody's received the right training. And then again, that's all been documented as well, to make sure that those pieces are well taken care of, because we've seen some things go south very, very fast. And again, it goes down to communication, right, Sherry?
It's exactly it. And that's why it's so important, why you have that qualified office manager in place and have everything like lined up. You want to take control of your practice, make sure you have the team that works together and your partners. And I keep saying this over and over, and it's such a reoccurring theme, and that is to have consistent work on that strong team and working together, not against each other. And I really try and remind your team and your practice that you're there for the better of the practice and the patients. So it's not about you, but it's providing that support. So you have team members that are supportive of one another, and they're going to be more productive, and you're going to have a successful practice. So when you work and initiate some of this, you're going to see it just shoot through the roof. And we've talked about different things, whether it be an incentive program, a bonus program, but something that's consistent on team building and making sure that they're excited and they're working together through the same goal, which is the better of your practice and patients.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And, I think the main word that we've said throughout all of this has been the consistency piece. And that stems from everything from the guidelines and communications. And I know from my experience when I first started managing a team, I didn't come with a background with an MBA. I had no idea about how to manage a business, how to lead a team. I came from a background of being a dental assistant and working in people's mouths, right? And so now I had to be responsible for my team, and I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to lead a team. And from all the lessons that I had to learn the hard way and seeing why are we constantly in chaos? Why do I feel like I'm in chaos all the time and just a firefighter and having to put out fires every single day? And it all boiled down to not having effective communication, not having those protocols to build that consistency, and not effectively training and communicating this to my team. So once I stopped, I figured out, I'm like, hey, this is the true definition of insanity. I'm doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, and I'm not getting it. So what do I need to do differently so that we can stop this? Because I'm spending more time having to repeat myself over and over and over. And why? Because I didn't really set that time, set that pattern, set that process up, and set myself or my team up for success. And that was really that turning point. And I know the exact same thing happened to you, right, Sherry?
Well, there's always that, yeah, and a lot more. And you get frustrated so much, and
Yeah.
just having that patience and just knowing that you're going to work through it,
Exactly. And there's no such thing as failure, right? Like we're not failing at this. Our team's not failing at this, but it's either a breakdown in process or communication. So let's lean into it with curiosity to see like, okay, how come this is consistently happening? How can I get from this result to where I want to actually take the practice and see the results for my team and for the business as well? And then really putting together that that framework and getting your team involved. So in that way, they can help put together some of the solutions. And when I did that, that was a huge game changer, because now my team members, they felt invested, that instead of just, clocking in and just working on patients and clocking out, they saw that some of the things that we're working together and learning from and growing from, we're growing together. And that just created a great bond, and it created an amazing culture, and it helped with the retention of our team members. So it was definitely great for us to just work on our goals together. And I feel like that's something that, going into 2021, I think, we really want to be able to see how can we support each other? How can we support the business, and how can we grow together? And, ending the year is usually when I like to do some reflection. So what we want to help support you with as well is to provide those resources for you. So our team is offering compliance audit and HR strategy sessions to be able to see what are some bottlenecks in the business, what are some areas of liability or vulnerability, to be able to see how can we build an even stronger business and future-proof our practice for the new year. So I invite you to take advantage of that compliance audits and HR strategy sessions to be able to see how we can make 2021, an amazing year for us. And so in closing, Sherry, what's one piece of advice that you can give these practice owners right now that they can take and apply within their business and just see a better 2021?
Well, I just think that just your attitude and willing to listen and communicate with your team and be open to any suggestions or changes that they may feel is better for the practice, whether it's a system or something with your patients. And especially everything that we've kind of gone through with COVID and how things are going, your team is a huge part of your practice. And so just be open to maybe possibly your practice. And
Oh, I think Sherry, she's going to leave you on a cliffhanger there. I don't, I think the
I don't know what happened. Can you hear me?
we're going to just have to fill in the blanks ourselves and create our own numbers.
But yeah, I feel like it's really important that you try and implement new things and plan ahead for 2021. We don't know what's in store, but staying ahead and making sure that you have a really strong team. And like me and you have talked about too, strong systems in place, because that's what's going to get you through and keep you going on that momentum.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I feel like 2021 should be called the year of momentum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing some great words of wisdom, for using this time to do some confessions of some of the mistakes that we made as office managers to really help practice owners, find a shortcut, curve that learning curve, that massive learning curve about managing a team and creating an amazing culture. So if there's any support that you guys are looking for, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to help. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.